Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
I no longer wanted to be in relationships that were transactional, that were I do this, then you give me that. And then when you didn't give me that and change the finish line, change the conditions without discussing with me, then I'm sort of left holding this bag of I did my part. Now, where are you in doing your part? And I decided I'm done with that carroting love, right? The I'm gonna hold love at the end of this carrot, and if you do this and if you do that, then maybe you'll get it. So it created in me this sort of cognitive dissonance. That's it.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA.
Hi, this is Jake Eberly, the producer of the Bonus Babies podcast, and today Jayne Amelia speaks with Regina Louise. She's a sought-after speaker, teacher, coach, and author. Recently, she was the recipient of the prestigious Christopher Award, given to producers for the stories that affirm the human spirit. In 2019, she received the Jordan Award for service in transforming foster care through advocacy and the arts, and Community Service Award for Children and Families from the Seneca Foundation. She's the author of the bestselling memoirs Somebody's Someone and Somebody Has Led This Child to Believe, a Lifetime movie, I Am Somebody's Child, a Regina Louise Story, which is based on her life and was nominated for a 2020 NAACP Award for Best Director. There's really so much more, but we'll let her tell her story. Here's Regina Louise.
Hi, I'm here with Regina Louise. Hello, Regina.
Hi, Janie. How are you?
I'm good. I have to ask you something because it came up when we were scheduling this. You said, I'm boycotting Easter. Can you tell me about that? What's going on with?
I don't buy into the symbolism of it. It's commodified beyond words. And for me, at least, I'm not buying into the status quo version of Easter, although I did send out little memes,
That's what I was
to
going to ask you
people.
about next. It's really cute that you sent me a little meme where this bunny pops up like out of
Right,
nowhere and wishes you happy Easter. Well, yeah, I
right.
think
So,
unfortunately it's now just a huge marketing opportunity, right?
right. And also, what I love is there's a Bonnie Raitt song, and it's titled Nobody's Girl. And in the song, one of the best verses, and it was like one of the first times I could actually look into a lyrical mirror, if you will, and see myself. And the verse is, she's a walking contradiction, but I ache for her inside. That's me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's lovely too. So can you tell me now, you've written books about this, so I'm hoping that our audience will go out and get them and also see the film made about your life as well. But can you tell me a little about who you are, where you're from, your family of origin, what happened in your early years?
Who I am, where I'm from, my family of origin, what happened in my early years. So let me answer those in the way that they land in my listening. I am originally born in Austin, Texas, and I was there until I was around 11. originally that question lands in a much broader way, but I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I did the 23andMe, and I am about as Heinz 57 as it comes if I rely on the data produced by 23andMe. So I'm from everywhere. That's a fascinating notation. I now live in Northern California, and yeah.
So, I know that your mom had you very young.
Mm,
In fact, you wrote in your book that she was also in foster care, and she had you very young, and you ended up in foster care as a young girl as well. Did you understand what was happening, or was it just you just accepted that things were not stable and you weren't being taken care of? And because you sought your own help, actually, you actually got help for yourself. Didn't end up
right,
be that great help, but you had no place to sleep, and you actually reached out and said, I need somewhere to go.
right.
What made you do that?
It's interesting that you asked that question, and it's Easter. I
Yeah.
believe that, yeah, I believe that within myself, I am a spiritual being endeavoring to have a human experience. And I, as a young girl, was aware of this essence within me because there was no one to go to. I didn't know anything about psychological safety or, it was all guided. My entire childhood, young adulthood, adolescence, all of that, and adulthood now is governed mostly by gut and inner guidance. So I knew that something in me knew, and I trusted that something, that I was in a unusual predicament within my so-called family system. And the books I read, none of the characters in the books were experiencing. So I knew from within, I knew that from my internal guidance system, that the people whose care I was left in, they did not want to take care of me. They did not want to care for me. They didn't want to, and they were pretty upfront about it. And so I got an opportunity to face that vitriol, to face the abhorrence that they held about my existence. And it was in direct opposition to what I felt inside. So left to my own, I felt incredible inside. I was the type of child that woke up every single day so excited, so happy, and, just exuberant. So when I engaged with people, the people who were meant to care for me, and the disdain and the darkness and the heaviness, I didn't have a language for that then, but I knew this isn't good. The good I feel does not, when I'm around them, it's not there. It's when I'm not around them that I feel I can do anything. So I started to rely on that more and more and more. And I began to understand that inner knowing. I know it now as, let's just say, you could call it Christ consciousness, you can call it divine awareness, whatever languaging you want to use. But for me at that time, looking back, I'm going to say it was Christ consciousness awakening and offering me a alternative to what I was needing to face. And for me, I learned to rely on that feeling was tangible. And when I look back now, it was a way to self-soothe, self-regulate, self-validate, to assure myself that my feelings were valid. Because for an 11-year-old girl to make a pact with God and say, should these people beat me one more time with a water hose or rose bushes where I'm going to have to sit in Epsom salt to close the wounds, to pull the rose bush thorns out, if that's going to happen, then I'm going to need to rely on this inner knowing even more so. And that's basically what happened.
You know, you wrote something in the book I thought was so interesting. You said, what would make anybody want to throw out their own flesh and blood and not even think 2 times about it? Why do folks go around having babies that they don't even have a mind to keep in the first place? Is that something that you thought about as a child too? Or have you come to that now as an adult?
Sure. Of course, that's something I thought of as a child. It's, why did these people have me? Maybe not in that context, so thoroughly considered, but I still wonder why people who are so unconscious, perhaps driven by the patterns of how they learned love, which oftentimes in the case of abuse and neglect is very toxic. I am a Hoffman process teacher. And if you don't
Mhm.
know what it is, I suggest you look it up because it's too.
No, please explain.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, can you explain it for our
sure.
audience?
So, I am in my private practice, I am an emotional wealth coach. In my work, where I work 1 week a month, 7 days I work with incredible human beings who come for 7 days and in a residential milieu where they get to explore the nature of what we call the negative love syndrome. And the negative love syndrome is how one sees their relationship and how one experienced their relationship to their family system, and how in exchange for belonging, in exchange for love, in exchange for that thing we call family, we go into patterns. We go into what's called the negative love syndrome. And so the patterns can be a range of things. And so I can look back and recognize that many of us as humans, we don't recognize the ways in which we were taught love, taught to love. We don't oftentimes recognize the ways that we were told we were unlovable, we were unworthy. And so, if in the case, like my own mother and father, two beautiful, brilliant, Black people, teenagers, my father, a star athlete, super high IQ, incredible musician, my mother, super high IQ, but a victim of sex trafficking in her own right. And to have these two people come together in such a hopeless place, in such a broken place, yes, they were going to bring me into the world from that place. If they didn't know what they were working from, if they did not know from where they came, if they did not understand the conditions that shaped them, then there was no way for them to heal. There was no way for them to want to do it different. So they were coming to one another from the same brokenness that had shaped them, which of course epigenetically was going to affect me. And so Sure. I came to a place in my life where I was able to recognize, actually, one day I was standing in front of 3,500 people. I believe it was a First Five California conference. And I recognized as I was sharing my story that, oh, wait a minute. My parents actually conceived me out of love, at the very least lust, but out of love because they were attracted to one another. You know, it was a consensual union. And yeah, so I was born of a particular type of teenage lust slash love, and I can live with that. And
Yeah,
although they
yeah.
couldn't, yeah, come on. I
Yeah.
can I can say that I'm a product of that. That works. And I do believe that. So when I intimate that, why do people have children that they don't want? Ah, it's it's complicated.
Yeah.
Now that I am an adult and I understand many of the intersectionalities that impact a woman, her body, choice, people, circumstances, cultures, family systems, we can go on, economics, all of those categories can impact and do impact the quality of life and opportunities that any one person has, especially when that one person might come from a historically underrepresented demographic.
Right. And you call yourself a foster care abolitionist. And
Hmm.
I love that idea. I think that
Hmm.
the foster care system needs to be disrupted. It's not working for almost
Right.
all children. And yet
Right.
somehow we can't come up with stuff that's any better, despite the billions of dollars that are spent.
Right. 650 to be exact, but let's just 650. Last I checked, the flat working budget of what is spent on foster care. I am lost for words.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, you were in a lot of different homes. You were mistreated regularly. The only place that maybe you felt a little bit safe was when you were with Miss Kerr, right?
Hmm.
And even then, that was taken from you. Can you tell me a little bit about how I know you found her later in life and she ended up actually adopting you, which is just fantastic. Just and I just I want to hear a little bit about that relationship because in spite of how much you were let down, somehow you were able to connect with this one woman who saw you for who you were, which is just a child who needed love, right?
That's a nice way to put it. But I also want to reframe that a bit, Janie.
Please.
Just like one day I stood on a stage and recognized that I was more than likely conceived out of consensual love, lust. I also have awakened to the reality that someone loved me. So the relationship between Jean and I don't believe could have happened unless someone had loved me first.
Ah, yeah.
I am a huge proponent for attachment theory. I am all about it. I believe it. Thank you, Bowlby and Ainsworth, because in those most crucial first days, months, years, I was made to believe that I was adored. I was made to believe that I was loved and wanted. I was made to believe that I was lovable and that I was loved because I believe we cannot recognize what we don't know. I can't recognize what I don't know. And in order to recognize it, I must know it. So I knew love, which is why I was able to take myself away from people who wanted to beat me. I knew that wasn't love. And I knew that somewhere along the line, I suspected. And then once I began my healing journey, 30 years plus ago, I learned, oh, wait, I am lovable. I have been loved. I know love. I know kindness. I didn't understand it then. I know what it means to attune, to attach. I understand what it means to have a safe person, a person, another person who can co-regulate. So all of that had to be laid out and activated within me in order for me to later in life understand it. So sure, I grew up in conditions that shaped anxious attachment, but I have worked so long and so hard to secure that anxious attachment, to anchor it in my own experience. And so that is something that I want to pick up later when you ask me about this woman, Jayne, and her loving me, because as beautiful as that is, there's another level that is even more beautiful, even more profound. And we can talk about it now or we can talk about it later.
Yes, please. Yes, yes, please.
Right. So recently, as you know, as I've been on my healing journey, and as I told you, I'm an emotional wealth coach. I work as a Hoffman process teacher. And I believe that all of these things, all of these ways in which I've moved through the life have led me to probably one of the most crucial developmental milestones that or I could call them a spiritual developmental milestone, and that is self-love. So that to me is the penultimate. And yes, Jayne adopted me, but I want to make something very clear because it's so easy to turn this into a white woman saving a black girl. That trope is so hackneyed. And, you know, even Hollywood wants to perpetuate that
That's right.
trope.
Yes.
And it's just not true. Jayne adopted me because I loved
Right.
her. Jayne adopted me because I searched for 30 years to find her. Okay. Jayne adopted me because I reminded her of a life and a self that she lost. She left behind.
Mm,
Right. And I want to be very transparent. As beautiful on the surface as an adult adoption is and how cool that was, what it really did is opened my eyes to the reality. That story is not so different than the distraught woman finding her prince. It's on that same level of being rescued, being saved. Okay. And Jayne was not my savior. In all reality, I was Jayne's savior, if there were a savior. And when I met Jayne, her circumstances, they were completely reversed, completely reversed. And I had a choice. Do I want to step back into the past this deep and help this woman pull her life back from the choices she agreed to, right? Or can I just leave it, keep solid with the growth that I've attained for myself? And I made the decision to unite with her as family because there was a part of me, I believe in internal family systems. There was a part of me that felt I owed her something for loving me. And when I unpack that even, I get to look at the conditions that inform that. And I am someone who comes from a background where everybody was paid to take care
yeah.
of me. I was led to believe that no one loved me, no one wanted me, and the only reason they ever would is they would have to get something. It was a transactional relationship. So naturally, when it came to intrapersonal rather relationships, then definitely I'm going to lead with I owe you. I want to pay you back. And I've never met anybody in my life where I've gone to them and said, I owe you for taking care of me and let me pay you back. I've never met anybody who said, no, you do not have to pay me anything. Right?
Wow.
So all relationships are so, they can be, especially for the dispossessed, especially for those who have been historically marginalized. So what I learned from that is ultimately my responsibility to exhume, if you will, because I believe she was always there. I believe each woman and man, but woman has a birthright to inherit the brilliance, the simplicity of the divine mother, of divine femininity, divine feminine love. I'm born from divine feminine love. And my son was born from divine feminine love. All the children in my life my son is from my womb, but I have many children who are from my heart. They are all born from divine feminine love, albeit the heart of the womb. And what I did for myself this past September 17th, 2022, I did something so profound. I gave myself a self-love ceremony. And
What was that like?
I understood, oh my gosh.
Yeah, can you tell me about that?
Oh my gosh. I decided that I no longer wanted to be in relationships that were transactional, that were I do this, then you give me that. And then when you didn't give me that and change the finish line, change the conditions without discussing with me, then I'm sort of left holding this bag of I did my part. Now, where are you in doing your part? And I decided I'm done with that carroting love, right? The I'm going to hold love at the end of this carrot. And if you do this and if you do that, then maybe you'll get it. So it creates and created in me this sort
Mhm.
of cognitive dissonance. That's it. Dissonance. That's it. Where
Mhm.
I want it, and you say you're going to meet me there, and then when I get there, you're not quite there, or you've already passed that place and decided to change the rules of the game. And after a while, a sort of resignation set in, and I realized that people can be manipulative with love. They can be manipulative with what it means to belong. And so I decided I can't put my belonging no longer into another person, man, woman, family, partner. I can't do that. I don't want to do that anymore. And so I created this brilliant sojourn for myself. And I decided to go back. It was a process. It was a process that took a year. And then in the last 6 months, I created a course for myself, if you will. And the end of the course was to put on the type of self-love ceremony that was a dream. That way, I didn't have to worry about, a partner wanting to or not wanting to, changing their mind or not changing their mind, moving the finish line or not. I just thought, I'm going to get off that path of cognitive dissonance and manipulation, and I am going to take my power back from these sorts of situations and create what I want. And it was beautiful. So I hired an officiant. I love the lexicon of what I learned from this process. I hired an officiant, this beautiful, brilliant Black woman. It was perfect. And it was just perfect. And she was brilliant. And I did the research. I decided that I made a pact with myself to do it within a certain amount of time so that I could heal so many of those promises that were made but were never brought to fruition. So I made very definitive timelines and deadlines, and I met every single last one of them as a way to begin to heal the tears that existed in me around love as a result of trusting others and not necessarily knowing quickly enough how to draw the line when someone was violating that boundary of belonging. And so I very thoughtfully and lovingly created a path, and I kept to the path, and I ordered some of the most beautiful flowers that comprise my bouquet. The dress was exquisite, and I can be very flamboyant and very dramatic. So I made sure that everything spoke to those things about me that many people have had the biggest reactions to. I'm too big. I take up a lot of space, blah, blah, blah. I'm flamboyant. I took all of those accusations, if you will, and I decided to step into them. And it's like, hell yeah, I'm all of that. And then some. Would you like some more? So I gave that more to me. It's like, come on, girl, show me what you got, you know? And so I wanted to show myself what I was working with. And I rented a beautiful hotel. It was a gift from someone who I love very dearly. And she gifted that to me. And I didn't want anybody there. And I I'm like, I want this witness between myself and life. And so it was beautiful. I had a song written for that day to walk down the aisle. It was exquisite. I had a beautiful limo. I mean, everything around things that I had felt so disappointed. I took that disappointment and employed it on behalf of my enjoyment, right? So I was able to transform disappointment into deep enjoyment and wonderment and fulfillment. And it remains one of the, oh, and I had a photographer, so it was videoed beautifully. I lit a candle, a unity candle between me, myself, and love, and all of the parts of myself. I read vows that were, this thing is hands down. And I've had a lot of success. I've been able to curate a lot of success and opportunities for myself. Every single, whether it was a book, whether it was a one-woman show, the film, I went in hand, feet, teeth, nails. I've clawed my way. I've chewed my way through resistance. But no, 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 no. This was beautiful.
Mm.
And it remains one of the most beautiful milestones that I was able to make for myself. I am all about this idea of being self-made. It's real.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, so in reading your work and learning a little bit about you, what I'm particularly struck by is it seems, and maybe as you've said, this is a result of you knowing love early on, but you seem to be able to advocate for yourself and to save yourself repeatedly over and over again throughout your life. And
Well,
I
then
think
let's go back to Easter. Come on now. Let's talk. You want to go to church? Let's go to church, Janie. Come on now. Here we sit. Here we sit on the day that is representative of the resurrective ability of spirit, right?
Right.
To me, I'm always surprised by people who believe in God, believe in the story of the Christ, but do not understand resilience. So if resilience, as defined by Webster's at one point, is the ability to be pummeled, stretched past a reasonable degree of our humanity, torn, but to come back intact, unscathed by the experiences. If that is the definition of resilience, how is resilience and resurrection, how are they related? That should be an SAT question. So if you believe in the Christ story, he was stretched, he was pummeled, he was nailed, he was humiliated, you name it. And then he took it one step further. He died, right?
Right.
And then came back as a consciousness, transcended the body, came back as a consciousness. So how is that any different? Because foster children, unwanted humans, persecuted humans, all of those who have been left bereft of their own humanity, their own value, their own worth, their own right to be loved and lovable, they have been stretched beyond what one might think. Their capacity, they've died to the innocence of childhood. They've died to the possibility of belonging. So if you want a family at 5 and by 13 you still don't have that family, you had to die to that at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and every second in between that led up to that, where you had to face the fact that you did not belong in the way that you had desired. It's deep.
Mm-hmm.
This is deep stuff. So I learned when I was on the floor in solitary confinement, there were no door handles, no windows. It was a concrete floor.
Oh my gosh.
Oftentimes I'd be in my own urine and feces. So the only entity that I could belong to hold on to my sanity, was the light that wafted over the threshold at the foot of the door, right?
Yeah.
So
And what was that to you?
it was the same thing to me that when Viktor Frankl says, in between impulse and reaction lies freedom and choice,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So to me, lying on that floor, bereft of my humanity, touch, love, the light in that moment became the space between wanting to die and having my humanity pummeled at every moment. So I learned to live within that light. There was freedom in the light.
Mm-hmm.
There was welcoming in the light. There was belonging. I could plant my dreams, my possibilities into the light. And it's in the light that they were safe. It's in the light I was safe. It was dark in solitary confinement. And so the light that came from crossing the threshold that wafted into that room, that was my freedom. And that was my choice. So that's how my resilience was built.
Yeah. So let me ask you, when did it come upon you that you could also help others? Is that something that grew, or did you have an epiphany and said, this is something I have to do? Because you are out there.
I think for me, I've not been one to hunt down my purpose, right? I've been one to tell myself, give myself permission to be on purpose. So then I know that whatever endeavor I am involved with, I am owning, that is me being on purpose, because for me, the moment I was born, the moment I incarnated here on this earth plane, the moment I began to trust my intuition, I began to recognize that perhaps I have developed, as a result of my experiences, a strong sense of clairsentience. I recognized that I was on purpose. And so my purpose is to live, is to touch hearts and open them and live by example. So I hear a lot that representation matters, but I also know that the demographic in which I have spent 20 years represented is the least represented, and and young Black children are the most impacted. So my purpose, me living my life against all odds, seemingly insurmountable odds, me living my life on my terms as opposed to the terms of people who projected their disdain for me. I made a choice not to live from their disdain, not to live from their rejection. I made a choice not to live from my own parent and family and uncles and aunts' rejection. So to do that is to recognize that I was on purpose, as are all the people that I'm fortunate enough to work with, support, champion. To breathe is to be on purpose. To feel is to be on purpose. To forgive is to be on purpose. To hurt is to be on purpose, right? For me. So,
Okay, I want to ask you one other thing that I ask all my guests, and I know it's not going to be hard for you to dig deep because it sounds like you dig deep all the time. What is the one thing that no one would ever know about you unless you told them?
I'll just let my knowing answer that question. So then I don't have to make anything up. Very recently, I admitted that I have difficulty following the simplest, the most base of instructions. I can't follow recipes. I can't read instructions and follow them. And the level of anxiety, the panic that I go into is mind blowing. And very recently, someone who observed me when I was asked to do one of the simplest things. It is the most simplest thing you could have imagined. It's so simple that even if I had to explain it to you, I would, I would complicate it beyond measure. Okay.
Yeah.
And this person was a therapist and we were working. It was brilliant. We were working as colleagues and she just came up to me and she's just like, "You're brilliant. And I'm wondering," because she watched me with these instructions and it was a hoot. It was just hilarious. But my brain would just go blank, 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 panic. And she said, "Given the degree of trauma you experienced, I wonder what the relationship is between these particular experiences and that trauma." And
Yeah.
the stuttering, I literally glitch. It glitches. And then the panic. And I recognize then that that has led to me becoming clairsentient, the ability to read what is imperceptible to many, because my hypervigilance that's part of it as well.
Yes, I'm sure that's true.
Right.
Yep.
But when I take hypervigilance can become a compulsive, automatic way of being. So when I'm
Mhm.
aware of it and I can transform the compulsivity and employ that impulsivity on my behalf, it becomes a sixth sense of clairsentience. So I am able to read and perceive things that can feel otherworldly to somebody who that isn't necessarily their skill set. That is something that I've just been willing to accept and to recognize. And it is what makes me the kind of teacher, guide, shaman I will be so bold to say, I get it. So that's something I have never admitted out loud.
Right, right. And it's true that it's a gift
Right.
that perhaps felt or feels like a vulnerability, but actually it's a strength, it's a gift.
It's a gift. So my trauma, I have, by grace and grit and gratitude, transform that into this superpower, if you will, of being able to be a benevolent witness to the imperceptible.
That is just so cool. It's just cool. I want to thank you for speaking with me today, Regina. I know that now I realize this might have been much harder for you than I could ever have known.
Why?
Well, just to be able to do the steps to get online, to get on the phone, to get on the link, to get on the recording, to do all that. I appreciate that you put yourself through it in order for people to hear you. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate, you know what? I respect that. And it's just in this moment that I'm actually because this is the first time I've ever said it. I feel my feelings. Like there's a part of me that is very sad right now. There's a part of me, that part that people have accused of being too sensitive, but I will see as just being who she is, and that is sensitive. Because I shared something with you that I'm even still in some way receiving and understanding, and by you acknowledging that for the first time, what has happened is it's like it created this like vortex where all those times where I couldn't figure out things and the level of anxiety of getting it wrong, and if I track that back to the horrible beatings that I got when I was tasked to do things that were not in my understanding. I just got like what I'm saying to you right now, that level of awareness is it was the abuse, and it was the how I was held accountable as a child for things that I couldn't comprehend. That's what's coming through for me right now. And by you hearing me, oof, I'm gonna cry. Yeah. So thank you.
No, thank you, Regina. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Okay, you take care.
Thank you, Regina, for sharing with us so fully. Your work is clearly for the greater good, and it's much appreciated. Thank you again. If you'd like, you can follow Regina Louise on Instagram at @TheRealReginaLouise. And if you'd like to pick up one of her books, Somebody's Someone, a memoir, or Permission Granted, Kick-Ass Strategies to Bootstrap Your Way to Unconditional Self-Love, and lastly, Someone Has Led This Child to Believe, a memoir. Thanks again. Next week's guest is Jacqueline Robles. She's a former foster youth who aged out, made her own way because she's a relentless and determined powerhouse. Her whole story is about jumping through hoop after hoop, but the hoops keep on changing and getting ever higher. But she always met the challenge. She's got an incredible story. So join us next week for Jacqueline Robles. Thanks for listening, and be well.
If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposto. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at bonusbabies.org. See you next time.